guys. This episode was wild for me. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Well,
Please tell me you're recording.
Disagree.
Are you recording?
I mean, I am, but just for
okay.
the sake of recording right now, I got the sound check in. Renzo, do you want to read?
I can read, that's fine.
Your silky, soft, dulcet tones.
I have made you co-host for the backup recording.
Well,
you made that mistake once, it'll never happen again.
It's better if Jay does the backup recording because I've had it pause twice on me while I'm doing the recording, and so it pauses in the same place, and I cannot capture that. So, Jay?
Yep. Could I get recording?
You already do.
There it is. Okay.
Recording in progress.
All right, I'm recording.
You are recording. Hi, recording. I'm Dad.
I knew that was coming. I could feel it. I could feel it in my bones.
I get that a lot. Well, this is the TVMA podcast now?
Oh, yeah. Well,
maybe
I don't know.
Bit.
You know how it is when we podcast late at night, stuff starts getting kind of funny.
Yep.
Well, but good thing is I'm ready for tonight. Now, I do kind of have to pee, so it's a good thing I have this wicker basket next to me to be able to use just in case.
Just go pee.
It was a joke. Yeah, wicker basket. You get it's got the
holes.
Yeah.
So just go actually pee, so you're good then.
He doesn't actually have to pee.
I don't actually, yeah.
He's bending a curve. Wicker.
Wicker. What's that? Get it? Wicker basket?
Oh.
All right, let's do this.
Is that loud enough for all of you?
No, we're gonna sing tonight instead.
Space, the final frontier. No.
Oh, that was pretty good.
Yeah,
keep going.
Except it's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and I'm not doing that.
Well, if you did that off the cuff, that's pretty good, man. You got skills.
I play a bard in D&D a lot, and you have to be able to like improv song to cast spells. So
your DM actually makes you improv the songs?
No, I make me DM and improv the songs, and which is why I have such high standards for people who play like high charisma characters, because then you'll just have people who are like, I walk up to the dragon and seduce it. Okay, how? No, I just do. I want to roll. Okay, you've got a +10 difficulty to roll. Go.
The best bard I ever played with was a character who played it as an insult comic. So it was all about like roasting characters, and that was how they did psychic damage. It was great.
So there's actually a bard ability called Cutting Words. You can use it as
that's what it was.
Yeah, no, it's perfect.
But rather than just say I'm using cutting words, the player would always come up with some like legitimately cutting insult to their fashion or their look or something.
Yeah, no, I've been playing bards for like 10 years, and so I have a notebook that is carefully curated cutting words based on race and class. So if you're playing a dwarven paladin, I can insult you deeply versus like a tiefling warlock or a tiefling barbarian. Like, you guys get very different insults. Anyway, welcome to Beyond D&D. I mean Beyond Trek podcast.
I was waiting for that.
Red alert.
I'm your host, Dag. In the house with me today, I've got Big J and Renzo, and we're here to talk to you about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, episode, is it 8 now? Are we on 8?
Yeah.
8, The Elysian Kingdom. As always, this is your spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
So, the episode begins with Mbenga's personal log, as he explains that while the Enterprise surveys a nebula, he has been researching his daughter's condition, without any luck. She is running out of time, and if he doesn't find a cure soon, she will die. Rukia is out of the buffer, and he begins to read the end of the story to her, but she explains that she hates the way that it ends. She always wants the Huntress to team up with Sir Adia and to save King Ridley from Queen Nev and her forces of darkness. But that's not how the story ends. Ridley must choose whether or not to give up his greatest weapon, the Mercury Stone, or to save Princess Thalia. He tells her that one day, when she's better, she can write her own stories, and then sends her back to the buffer, and they say goodnight. In the main sickbay, he conducts an experiment that quite literally explodes in his face. As soon as Una enters the room, asking why the crew from the shuttle hasn't been cleared for active duty, he explains that he got caught up in his own research. Una reminds him that he has duties aboard the ship, but tells him to take some time to rest and to recover. It's important. On the bridge, they are ready to leave the nebula, and Spock reminds Pike of the human superstition of jinxing, as Pike is too quick to call the mission easy. Pike then turns to Ortegas, telling her to set a course for the McNair starbase, but the ship will not go to warp. It's just stuck. Confused, Pike asks Hemmer if the warp core is working, and Hemmer replies in the affirmative, suggesting that they put power into impulse engines instead. When they attempt to leave the nebula via impulse, the ship shakes violently, and Ortegas falls to the ground, seemingly injured. Pike calls for Mbenga's aid immediately, and he rushes to the bridge to try and help. As soon as he arrives, he steps out of the turbolift, and he's stunned by a dressed person in robes, and he himself is also in king's robes. The bridge crew greets him as king. Mbenga, now apparently King Ridley, explains to Pike that he is there to see Ortegas, who is now apparently Sir Adia, from the storybook that he read to Rukia in the sickbay. Pike, confused by this book he speaks of, and Mbenga realizes that he must be Sir Armand Routh. When Mbenga confirms that all systems are normal, he thinks that it must be hallucinating. But Routh turns to him and explains that this fog must be a bad omen. And then he looks to realize that the fog is the nebula outside of the main viewer. Adia explains that it must be sorcery sent by Queen Nev, and Mbenga decides to play along, telling them that he is going to go and retrieve a magical device called a tricorder, so that he can better understand what is happening. Magical. The halls of the ship are wooded and filled with fireflies as he walks to sickbay, and he enters what Chapel calls her sanctuary, as apparently she too is also affected by this strange anomaly. She begins to examine him, but he uses the tricorder on himself and on her, and both are perfectly healthy, but her dopamine levels are very elevated, suggesting something is wrong. Sir Adia enters, followed by Princess Thalia, whom we now learn is La'an, with her dog Runa in arms, with a matching dress, in fact. She explains that Queen Nave has taken her kingdom and her throne, searching for the Mercury Stone, and that she scarcely escaped with her life and her poor little Runa. He scans her, also again noting high dopamine levels, and Adia explains that the princess is right. If he does not use the Mercury Stone, then his kingdom will fall as hers has. Mbenga then hears Hemmer in the hallways, shouting that he is a superior officer, and Adia confirms, correctly identifies those who are taking him hostage as the Crimson Guard of Queen Nev. In the halls, we see Hemmer threatening to court-martial the officers who are wearing Crimson Guard robes, explaining that he has no idea why he's wearing wizard's robes before Princess Thalia shouts at them to stop. We learn from Mbenga that Hemmer is dressed as Castor, the wizard from the book, and is one of two brothers. Mbenga orders them to release him, but the Crimson Guard will not, explaining that Queen Nev no longer acknowledges the Letter of Accords, which deemed the woods as neutral territory, and they leave with Hemmer in tow. Mbenga explains that he does not have the stone, but that Castor knows where it is, and they must rescue him. Back in the ready room, which is now a war room, Routh suggests that a rescue is unwise because he's a coward, and suggests diplomacy. Adia, annoyed, would much rather chop something in half. Mbenga decides to go with diplomacy, and though Adia is not happy, he assures her that she will be able to chop things in half if their plan doesn't work. Princess Thalia is told to stay here and sings a delightful song, and then they leave to meet with Queen Nev, though Routh is reluctant. On the way, however, they come across Pollux the wizard, Spock, who explains that the only way to get to Queen Nev is through the Swamp of Infinite Deaths. Mbenga promises that he will not only use Castor for his power, but to save him, so Pollux agrees to take them around the swamp through a secret passage, a Jeffries tube, and they are on their way. Adia does not trust him, and neither does Mbenga, but they don't really have another choice. Once they arrive, it is revealed that they have fallen into a trap, and Queen Nev, Uhura, is there chewing some scenery. She demands to know where the Mercury Stone is. Being a coward, Routh kneels immediately, and Mbenga refuses to tell her where it is. She says the torturers might as well get it out of him, and they are sent immediately to the dungeons, where they find Hemmer. Hammer then realizes that he and Mbenga are the only two unaffected, and Mbenga explains that they are playing characters in a children's book that he reads to his daughter. Mbenga knows that Hammer cannot find the stone, but that he can help solve the real problem because he is unaffected. Because of his years of telepathic training, he sensed the consciousness trying to affect him, but was able to block it, refusing to do so again because of how unpleasant the contact was. Hammer surmises that the consciousness may have pulled the story from Mbenga's mind and explains that the consciousness is not on another ship, but is in the nebula itself. Hammer impresses Routh and Adia by using a plasma torch to open the gates of the dungeon in order to get them to the engineering so that he can understand more about the entity. Back in Nev's kingdom, the Crimson Guard explains that the prisoners were lost, and Nev is feeling merciful, ordering Spock to take the Crimson Guard to capture her prisoners once again, rather than just throwing him in the dungeon. In the hallways, Mbenga and his group are accosted by the Crimson Guard and Pollux. Adia engages a fight with them, arming herself as Routh asks for permission to flee, which he does. Though Adia eventually loses the fight, the Huntress of the Forest, Zamira, played by Una, comes to the rescue to the team, and is revealed that the Huntress and Adia know each other. In engineering, Hammer brings up a theory of a Boltzmann brain, a consciousness without a body that is theorized but never proven, may spontaneously come to exist. He suggests that this consciousness may be exactly that. Hammer suggests that the only way to stop it would be to sever the connection between the entity and Mbenga, possibly by hurting him, as the entity is getting the story from his mind. Adia and Zamira begin bickering about their background, and Mbenga stops them, explaining that in the book, they're not supposed to know each other at all. Both of them insist that they know each other quite well. Mbenga remembers that his daughter had wanted them to end up together and hated how the story ended, as we realize in the beginning of the episode. In sickbay, he realizes then that Rukia was beamed outside of the buffer earlier that morning, and explains to Hammer that she is very sick and possibly running out of time, not knowing that Pollux is listening as well. Pollux goes to Queen Nev and explains that the Mercury Stone is a girl, and she will stay. And she says that she will take the girl for her own, then bringing out Routh and ordering him to be loyal to her. In sickbay, Mbenga is having no luck finding Rukia, but Hammer asks where she would want to go, and he realizes that she must be hiding in his quarters. As they are on their way, they encounter Routh, who tries to feign loyalty before holding Ridley at knife point as he tries to enter his own quarters. Queen Nev and the guard are not far behind him. Nev explains that she found someone to bend to her will, and if that gives her his daughter, he may live. Hammer gives a long, wizardly speech before pulling out a communicator that he rigged to be a transporter, beaming Nev and her soldiers out of the hallway before they can do any more harm. In his quarters, he finds Rukia, and she said that the entity is her friend. He explains that the entity is hurting his friends. Mbenga explains that the entity is hurting his friends, and she does not want to go back into the buffer. Mbenga scans Rukia and realizes that she is not sick anymore, and Hammer volunteers to let the entity speak through him. Once the entity takes hold, through Hammer, the entity explains that she does not want Mbenga to take Rukia, and that Rukia is like her, lonely and scared. She wants to protect Rukia, but she will only be better if the entity can help her. Mbenga must make a choice. Hold on to Rukia, or let her consciousness join with the entity to be free of illness and death. Mbenga makes his choice, explaining that King Ridley had to make a similar choice with the Mercury Stone, the story of the whole episode. And that's when he realized that it had a soul, that the Mercury Stone itself had a soul. The entity then takes Rukia and she vanishes, only to reappear moments later as a grown woman, thanking him for the choice that he made. She is creating her own adventures and living her own life, and that moments for Mbenga have been years for her. And the entity, whom she is now named after her own mother. She tells Mbenga that they will meet again, and that he must create his own stories, and he must be happy. Hammer awakens and has no memories of the last 5 hours, and neither does the rest of the crew. Una, back in sickbay with Mbenga, asks him what happened, and he explains it to her, beginning like every other good story does, once upon a time. He's the only member of the crew who recalls anything that happened during that period.
Well read.
This episode took some turns into places that I think very few viewers saw coming. I don't know. Did anybody see the Rukia merging with the Nebula twist? Anybody? No? Yeah, I didn't see that either.
I definitely had a lot of the Princess Bride vibes from this, but I wasn't seeing that twist. But I was glad we got Hemmer. Because remember last week I was talking about I'm a little worried.
It's been like 4 episodes since we've seen Hemmer.
Right.
Like that we finally saw Hemmer's antennae move a little bit, particularly when he was controlled by the entity from the nebula.
I thought about
finally wiggled some and did things, which was nice.
I thought about you when I saw that. I was very pleased. I was like, oh, Renzo's gonna be happy about that.
Yeah.
Though it does provide an interesting justification for why his antenna haven't moved before. Maybe because he's a blind Anar, they just don't wiggle their antenna, or he doesn't wiggle his antenna, so when somebody else is controlling his body, the antenna wiggled, because that's the only time we've seen them move.
Tell me again with the antenna wiggling that's from the Andorians, is that like their version of, I don't know, wiggling their ears?
No, it's emotional. They just move them as they're speaking to emphasize their feelings as they say things. Or at least Shran and other Andorians have.
Okay, so it's not so much you can control it, it just goes by how you're feeling. Maybe he's just always chill. That's why his don't move.
I don't know, man. Like when we saw Shran say things, like they would gesticulate wildly, they would go down.
That was Shran.
We know Hemmer's an Anar, and we've only seen like 2 other Anar in Star Trek entirely canon.
Something like that.
The blind woman and her twin brother who was forced to pilot that Romulan vessel telepathically.
And then the daughter.
The daughter.
Oh, right.
Shran's daughter.
He married her. But I don't know. We could speculate all night about, did they actually move in those episodes? Blah, 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 blah.
I just rewatched them.
Okay. All right. Well, I knew you'd do your homework on that one.
And more so, in season 1 of Discovery, there's an Andorian named Shukar. He's the one that we meet in the Mirror Universe, and then we meet his Admiral version in Starfleet afterwards. His antenna also moved like normal Andorian antennas. So whatever it is, I don't think it's something inherent to the makeup. It may just be something for the character.
True.
Maybe maybe on Enterprise and stuff like that, they used the mechanical things to make them tweak. And it was something like, do you remember Doug Jones' original makeup for Saru, the big triangle head with all the eyes?
Yeah.
Well,
no, I don't think I saw. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, we talked about it because that species kind of made an appearance in Lower Decks as Shelby's first officer. But Doug Jones had said that the way that they were going to film that with that kind of makeup was he would have makeup to like here and then be green screened, for CG to do all the eyes and stuff. But that has to be rotoscoped and all the technical stuff that have to go into that. For someone like Hemmer, outfitting him with the animatronics for the antenna now just isn't a thing that they want to do. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just saying that for the sake of, whatever, they don't want to pursue that in Hemmer.
I don't know. If the excuse is that they don't want to do it, it seems like a lazy excuse. Because the expressiveness of Shran's antennae was like one of my favorite things about him. That scene where they hail the Enterprise and you just see the back of like Archer's head and then Shran is right behind it, but you see the antennae pop up in front of it is just so iconic to me from Enterprise. It'd be nice to be able to do more things with the emotional range of the antenna. But yeah, you're right. The way they did it in Enterprise with Backpack. Jeffrey Combs talks about it in a couple of interviews, and it's like a backpack that had like a dedicated person that controlled the antenna while he was speaking all the time.
Sitting in the backpack, like Yoda or some shit like that.
It was remote controlled.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was more like a like an RC car and like a remote control.
Oh yeah.
I totally think that they could probably have better animatronics for that now. A little signal stuck in the bottom of the antenna with some mechanized things that does the stuff, but then you have to hire someone to program, happy, sad.
Well, they would CGI
upset, surprise
the antenna, I would think now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess you could, but then you'd have to block out the existing antenna. I don't know how much any of that costs. But maybe Hemmer just doesn't have emotions, guys.
That's what I was saying. Maybe he's just always
snark,
chill.
Man. He's got plenty of snark.
He's got snark, and if there was going to be one scene where his antenna moved absent external influence, it would have been that one where he was like, "Science!" His antenna should have been like flared. It would have been great.
All right, so let's talk about some of the character beats in this episode.
Okay.
In particular, I want to say that I think that this is a great episode for seeing Anson Mount's like acting chops, because his main characters and his other characters in shows are generally like heroic badass dudes. In this one, he is the sniveling, useless coward, and he plays it so fucking well.
He does.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it, but thank God for Anson Mount, because he just, anything he's in, he just, I don't know. That's a testament to his great acting, but the way he played this role and some of the small nuances of some of the looks he did, some of his reactions were just little extra on point things to get a laugh out of.
Him and Ortegas' like physical comedy towards
Yes.
each other, just their looks and their glances were perfect. Lots of disgust and annoyance at each other.
And that scene where Anson like raises his capelet and Ortegas is like, "Get that hand out of my way."
Yeah.
Interesting thing to note here is that I strongly felt that each of our main cast here was given a role that's almost diametrically opposed to their primary role. Captain Pike went from the steadfast conscience to the cowardly traitor. Uhura was this wholesome ensign learner and is now like the evil queen, top of the food chain, will kill you. La'an was stoic and serious and kind of went for like silly and melodramatic, and like if anybody chewed scenery wherever they were, it was La'an. Just
Yes. He was the best.
And even Chapel went from this science-obsessed risk taker to a somewhat cautious mystic. And so I really liked the way that not only were they given the opportunity to play a different role, but to play the opposite person.
I've got an exception for you though.
Okay.
Una as a character is like a commanding, competent loner. She isn't commanding people, but she kind of likes to do things on her own, right? Zamira the Huntress kind of has the same vibe. She's off serving the woods or protecting the woods, but she does it alone. So I don't think hers is all that different.
So I'll admit that in my notes I did not mention Una because you're right. And that leads me to believe that because Rukia cast everybody in these roles, that Rukia probably really looks up to Una.
Or she thinks that Una and Ortegas would be a cute couple.
She totally ships those two characters in the book anyway. Completely 100%.
They do. I think that's a good pairing right there, because they're both such badasses.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
That scene where Ortegas is like, "I have rearmed myself." It's just like, you set the terms, let's go.
I am curious though, so we don't actually get to see much of the fantasy novel or the fantasy kids book that goes through it, but we get some pictures here and there. And most of the characters' depictions are very close to what we actually get. Mostly. But Sir Adia's, I'm not sure if it was a gender-swapped version of the character too. I'm not 100% sure. So I don't know if Ortegas' character in this is supposed to be, like, male or not. Or non-binary. I don't know. It's just kind of vague.
I think it should be whatever you want it to be. Renzo?
Yeah, make it your story.
I love Ortegas anyways. Give me more Ortegas episodes. This was her best episode so far.
It is, but she wasn't her, and that's what makes it frustrating for me, is like... and Ortegas is another one who definitely was not the opposite of who they were. If anything, she was more bold, more forward, and more snarky. Just the enhanced Ortegas right there.
Ortegas plus.
I knew in watching this that Cal, my fashion experienced husband, was going to be like nuts about it. So when I watched it again with him, and every 5 minutes, as soon as someone else was introduced, there was just expounds of, "Oh my god, that is amazing, I love that, what did they do, no, pause, I need zoom in, I need to see who those pauldrons are." Just all kinds of excitement on the costumes. And I want to talk a little bit about some of those moments that maybe our more fashion endeared audience might also have picked up. But notably, La'an's fit A-line gown that was like the sparkly blue to pink gradient.
Yeah.
Pike's nearly historically accurate doublet and hose for his costume, and a brooch that was reminiscent of Game of Thrones' Hand of the King.
I noticed that too.
But if you also noticed, it's an inverted Command Division star.
Oh, that's a nice catch.
So that was a real interesting moment there, that it was upside down the star that is inside the comm badge, with a little bit of creative license there. Um, what we really liked was that Mabenga and Rukia's outfits in the fantasy felt very African inspired. The hand carved layered bead necklaces that Mabenga was wearing, and his daughter had also a colorfully beaded collar. Just touches of influence there that were really cool.
There was a really neat interview with Bernadette Croft, the costuming designer, that's in the ready room that you should probably show Cal. I think he'll love it.
Okay.
But they did some really cool things. So the crown that King Ridley wears is
Tell me.
is 3D printed and based on a real one that a Nigerian king was buried in.
Oh, I was looking for evidence, and I'm so glad. This is amazing.
Yeah, no, they 3D printed it and it was based on a real one. They were adamant that the patterns that are on his dress or his gown, his
robe,
his clothing,
his kingly...
were also, yeah, it's like a kingly gown. They're also 3D printed on, and they're based on both a Nigerian symbol of loyalty and like the Starfleet Delta too.
That's
so they
cool.
like went ham on the details for these. And yeah, you're right. The beaded necklace, handmade. The seashell necklace that he's wearing, also handmade. They actually used an original antique that they made copies of for this too, for some of his detailing. They went super in depth on making all the costuming. In particular, they talked about how they made the Crimson Guard outfits based on like East Asian leather-bound armor sets that were worn. So overall, Bernadette Croft had a field day making this. My favorite story, though, was that Runa, which is actually the dog of the actress who plays La'an.
Dang it!
That's actually her dog.
Dang it, that was trivia.
Oh, sorry. Anyways, the dog had matching costumes to everything that Princess Thalia wore, so any scene where she's in, she's wearing a matching dress to the one carrying. I love that.
That's such a good note. Other notable things, Ortega's had custom-made pauldrons that went from the shoulder all the way to the collar, which is something you wouldn't normally see in a, security guard kind of thing, but it also made them really cool and notable. And then the last thing of note that I thought was really cool was Rukia's adult costume as silver shiny LeMay 1960 spaceman as it was, felt like it had very strong influences of the African coiled choker collars that you might see usually in gold, but this one was kind of silver.
Another one you're talking about. Yeah.
I tried so hard to find like what the name of that was, but apparently my Google foo is weak in terms of that. I found a number of cultural names associated with that collar, but it's still just culture name collar, like you would say an American vest. So I didn't want to misuse the terms there because I don't really understand them, and I was driving.
You made a mention before about the sword being too long. Can you tell me more about that? Because I didn't catch that at all.
I didn't mention it in this thing yet. You just read through my stuff.
It's in this section, though.
Yeah, but I didn't mention it yet.
Well, tell me about it, because I think that's interesting. I didn't know what to think of that.
Okay, so there's a scene where Ortegas is putting the sword back in the scabbard. And the way that the actor chose to do that was by lifting the scabbard up and reaching way far out, and it felt a little awkward. And having like done stuff with Cal, and we've talked about sword scabbard things in the past and stuff like that, Cal's immediate response was like, "Oh, that's just a sword that's too tall for the actor." That's what happens when the sword is literally too long for the actress, who's probably like 5 foot nothing.
Do they usually need to custom make those swords
Well,
based on someone's height?
I mean, usually, if you are in practicality, if you are wielding a sword, you want to be able to reach down to your comfort area, grab that sword, and whip it out. And if you have to whip it out even higher than you normally would, because the sword's too long,
Uh-huh.
that endangers you for that split second longer that you have to pull out that sword. And
Yes.
then if you're on the battlefield and you need to put that sword back quickly and maybe help somebody, if your scabbard is too long and you have to spend a second or two finagling your sword back into it, that can lead to a vulnerability on the battlefield as well.
Gotcha.
But the
Okay, so they
sequence is the scene in the show is when they go into Mabenga's quarters near the end, and he tells Ortega's
Adia?
character, to stand guard there, and it does a close up on putting the sword back in the scabbard, and instead of it just being a smooth motion, I'm watching the actor like look at the scabbard, lift it up, reach way far out, and put that sword back in, and it was not a fluid motion that you might expect.
You know, it might be because that wasn't Adia's actual sword. That was one of the swords that she took off the Crimson Guards when she disarmed them, remember?
That is true, but then it shouldn't have fit the scabbard so nicely.
Fair.
But you make a really good point. I don't want to dismiss that at all. That that was not the character sword. It was taken away, and we had to reuse a new one. Which then just speaks to the character's familiarity with the enemy's weapons and all that good stuff, being able to wield it effectively, and then be like, "Oh yeah, right, the sword's too tall for me. I'm gonna put it back." Really good in-universe explanation there, Renzo. I appreciate that observation. Moving forward with other observations, we already mentioned Rukia shipped Una and Ortegas' characters. I was a little perplexed about why Hemmer didn't remember, and I chalked it up to just like the entity wiping his memory because maybe the experience wasn't gentle. And
Well, I didn't get that either because I don't. All I can tell you is that the expectation I had was that anyone who knew what was really going on, example Mbenga and Hemmer, would remember, and Hemmer not remembering that part to me didn't quite add up. But then I wonder if it's because he was not under the influence of the entity and was supposed to be, so it just kind of, I don't know, wormholed itself to where he needed to have his memory wiped because he was not supposed to know what was going on. But that's stretch. That's stretching it. I can't think of anything better.
I saw wheels turning over Renzo's head. He was sitting back with a really smug smirk on his face. So let's have it.
I just feel like the chief medical officer's personal log at the end of the episode explains it. He literally goes, "None of the crew remember what happened. The entity's doing, my daughter's doing, I'm sure." So I'm sure that they just didn't want people to remember it because too much to handle. Having another character or another person's consciousness in your memories can be traumatic.
So
Probably something like that.
I've got some trivia and I've got some beef. What do you want to hear first?
I have beef
Ooh.
too, by the way.
Oh, I'm
Alright.
the only one that doesn't have beef.
Well, let's
Good
do
God, nice
let's
start
do
at it.
some trivia then, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So here's some trivia, and since we are in audio and a video format, I don't want to just yell out the answer because I have multiple co-hosts with me today. So if you know the answer, just raise your hand. If you don't know the answer, don't worry about it. I'll just
Okay.
I'll ask for the answer. Trivia question number 1. Name another episode of Star Trek where a non-corporeal entity made a young girl's fantasies a reality. Big J's locked it in. Renzo, you've got 5 more seconds. 4, 3. Renzo has raised his hand. I'm going to go with Big J because you locked it in first. Jay, what episode is it?
Okay, so I don't remember the name of the episode. Don't remember the name of it, but I know that there. Well, you know what? I can play scenes in my head. I'm trying to think how I would describe them. This little girl, she had an imaginary friend who was this evil, blonde-haired
Well, you
girl.
just said the name of the episode.
Did I?
Yeah, imaginary
Rewind.
friend.
Oh my God. Okay.
Renzo, was that your episode as well?
No, so the one I was thinking of was the Flaughter one from Voyager, Once Upon a Time. I thought that might have been it, because essentially the holodeck is a superior life form completing the dreams of Samantha in that case.
That was not the episode I had in mind, but we'll let the audience decide in the comments. The next trivia question is: name another time when an Enterprise resident merged with another godlike entity.
When you say
had
resident-
to specify Enterprise, because the Cerritos, like, he became like an energy being with the
Yes.
koala mandala, and that would have been a better answer.
Well, and then there's, Ransom's, I'm everything awesome, look at me, stop kicking me.
Well, I'm going to say Gary Mitchell in Where No Man Has Gone Before. But
Depending on
when
how you
s-
define the galactic barrier,
So Gary Mitchell's like
godlike
psionic abilities were magnified in that episode. That's what that episode was
Okay.
kind of referencing. Wasn't really merging with another godlike entity, but very close.
But in beta canon, it is. In beta canon, the reason that there's that galactic barrier is it was put up by Q, and he doesn't make contact with Q's power, but with, I believe the entity is called Zero, and it's outside of the galaxy. That's what empowers him.
So Jay,
Do
I
we-
saw Renzo's lips moving, but I put him on mute because I knew he was going to reference something from beta canon. I can only assume that he's apologizing.
Nope. Not apologizing.
I didn't mute you, so don't worry about that. Jay, do you have another idea?
Well,
I mean, it's Star Trek. We've got 600 hours.
Oh, I know. I was thinking, would it count TNG season 1 episode Hide and Q when Q gave
No.
Riker?
I thought about it, but I'm like, we just gave you powers. We didn't merge with you.
Okay, so merge. Godlike.
And I'm sure the audience doesn't have all day, so I'm going to give it
yeah,
away.
you would have to. Yeah.
Squire of Gothos was the only one I was thinking of, but I can't remember
The
exactly how that
Squire of
worked.
Gothos, you had just a baby Q screwing around with everybody else.
Right.
I mean, and you could talk about like maybe Nagilum taking over some people. Maybe that sounds like it. I don't count that. I count William Decker getting merged with V'ger.
Oh.
Okay.
Well.
Whoa, what about the one that made Deanna Troi pregnant?
It's not a merge. That's not a
That's a symbiotic.
That's super non-consensual.
Right.
I hate that episode.
Well, but I don't. You're right about Decker and Ilea merging with V'ger, but I didn't see V'ger as a godlike entity. Like I would not have given that as a possible answer.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of other times like we
I'm
kind
sure
of felt
there
it.
is.
We kind of felt it in Power Play when O'Brien, Troy, and Data are possessed. I mean, there's a bunch of possession episodes, and then Kira, not on the Enterprise, but possessed by a Pa Wraith or a prophet.
Her and Jake.
Yeah, but not Enterprise crew people, which is why I had to limit it to Enterprise.
Correct.
But then also, weren't the Organians possessing people on Enterprise in an episode?
They were.
Yeah.
Though, I don't know if I'd call that merging other than, how did you put it?
Non-consensual.
I took it more as influencing when it came to the
No, they were
Organians.
hopping around from body to body for a while
Yeah.
there. Remember how they
Okay.
were like talking to Trip while he was in decon as one person, and they hopped to another body to see if maybe they'll talk to this guy instead?
Oh wait a minute! I thought you were talking about the original series.
No, like TOS Enterprise. Not TOS, sorry, Enterprise Enterprise.
Okay.
Right.
I was thinking the wrong episode, wrong Enterprise.
So we took that question really far out there and gave our viewers and listeners a number of episodes to reference. If they haven't already seen them, please do enjoy them as much as we have. The last trivia question I have, because Renzo spoiled the other last trivia question I have. Who plays Runa, and why is that important? Because it's Christina Chong's dog. Did anybody notice that dog was just like licking Christina like all the time, every scene? And then for like other scenes, Christina was holding the dog down like this so they couldn't just be licking the makeup off the whole time. I thought that was a really interesting observation. I don't know. But the last trivia question is, who wrote the book, The Kingdom of Elysian? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you saw it or not. Big J didn't see it. Renzo saw it. Renzo, who wrote the book?
Ben Sisko.
Benny Russell. We've just confirmed that Benny Russell now actually exists in the history of Star Trek, not just as a prophet vision that Ben Sisko once had as him in Far Beyond the Stars, when he played the writer in the 50s.
It's making my brain spin inside its skull.
A little bit, yes. It made my brain spin as well. But then we can do a Renzo trick and go beta canon kind of just said that Ben Sisko closed the universe and reopened it with Discovery. So
it was a time loop.
So Benny is now canon.
So Benny Russell is now not just an ambiguous person who may or may not have lived. He's an actual author. Time and date of said author probably aren't necessarily canon, but if we go with Deep Space Nine, he is a science fiction and fantasy writer from the 50s, who apparently, because he was shut down writing his science fiction novel about a black man in the lead, he ended up writing a fantasy novel about black characters ruling kingdoms, which is amazingly cool in and of itself.
It's very Ursula K. Le Guin.
It is, and I absolutely need more Ice Queen Uhura in my life. But it's very interesting to me that they made Benny Russell the writer of The Kingdom of Elysia. If you can sort of draw a connection between M'Benga having to give up his daughter and Sisko having to give up his son. In one way, the daughter goes to become a godlike entity, and in another way, Sisko goes to become a prophet. Jay's the resident father-parent here, so he has words. I just created some beef. Let's go. Season it.
I always have words when it comes to a parent-child relationship, and the thought that I had with the whole thing with M'Benga and his daughter got me thinking, because it seems like in Star Trek, and I can't recall anything outside of Star Trek, but I know I've seen this kind of thing before, where a parent seems to be maybe a little too willing, and willing is not the word I'd like to use, but I can't think of a better word in regards to their child going and doing some traveler-like thing. But then I got to thinking about it with my oldest son Nacho, and if something like that were to be, kind of the last starfighter kind of thing, we need you to, come do the thing, defend the planet. And he would be gone for a while. And how would I feel about that if he wanted to go do such a thing? And my thought was that, okay, I guess putting myself in those shoes of a parent, you wouldn't want your child to forego an opportunity that would make them happy and that they would like to do. And it's actually something that I'm kind of going through in real life right now, because I really hope that he would continue playing football in high school, because I played and I was kind of liking the idea of seeing, the next generation and family playing football. And he told me, he said, Dad, I'm not going to play football my junior year for next year. And I knew then, and his mother and I had this conversation that if he didn't want to do that, if he didn't want to play sports, we weren't going to pressure him into that. Not like how I was, when I was his age, that we'd let him set his own path. But I tell you what, it was talking about is one thing, doing it in practice was a whole other. And he was talking about wanting to be a fireman. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. I'm not sure where that came from, wanting to be a fireman. But for me, and I kind of try to not so much talk him into playing football, but tried to give some positive pep talk on it. And I eventually just kind of said to myself, you know what? He needs to do his own thing. He needs to make his own path, do his own thing. Sure, I would like for him to have followed in my footsteps, even though I told him I never expected him to do that. But he's happy. Like he likes what he's doing. And if your heart is not in something, it shows. And I think that in a case like this with Mbenga and his daughter, I'm sure that he had I guess sort of this vision as to what he saw his daughter doing or what she would become. But you're going to get to that point. I think every parent is going to, when your child wants to do something and what makes them happy is not what you expected. And you've got to remind yourself, and I had to remind myself with Nacho, is that this is his life, not mine. I've done I was a teenager. I did my whole thing. I did something I thought I was supposed to do and thought that I was supposed to like, and it ended badly. So of course for him, I'm going to encourage that he does something that he feels that he would find fulfillment in. And it's that finding fulfillment that I see in these parents, in Benga and in Cisco. And you may want to guard and protect your child and guide them through what you think is right. But you really think about it, you may realize that, well, that child may have a better idea of what they want to do than you do, because obviously you're not them. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difficult parts of parenting, right? Knowing when to let go and knowing when to let them make their own mistakes so that they grow from them on their own. So yeah.
That's tough. Yeah, that is tough, because it's like, oh boy, wait until you're an adult and you step face first into that meat grinder and all the catches and tricks and everything else. But you can't really forewarn on everything.
Or should you, right? Some things you got to learn for yourself.
Right, you should. And
not all things you can forewarn. You can't figure out all the things that your kid might get into. By the way, Mom, thanks for all those times. You know what I'm talking about? Like, if you're listening, like, you're gonna think back and be like, what's he talking about? Like, the first 10 things that pop into your head, yeah, those are the times. Thank you.
Yes.
I got in trouble. I learned my lesson. Whew.
That's how you learn. You got to mess up to learn. So that's my parent angle.
Beef. What's your beef, Dad?
What's my beef? My beef might just, I think it wraps itself up, but I'm gonna go ahead and air it. My beef is that I think the writers backed themselves into a corner with Rukia's storyline just from the very beginning. Like, the doctor has his daughter in the pattern buffer, and we have to tell this story, but we also have to wrap it up at some point, because we can't just keep having Mbenga struggling with his daughter throughout the next however many seasons that Strange New Worlds gets. But I was really hoping that they were going to continue to build off of any of the wisdom or knowledge gained from Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach, that episode where the father of the new Ascendant gave Mbenga some information.
He even described it himself, though, as being like loose guidance to help you along the way.
Yeah,
but it's not a cure.
but again, this was like the Deus Ex Machina in reverse almost. Like Mabenga didn't come up with some super amazing cure. We just had a god show up and be like, "Hey, I want to play with your daughter forever. Let me have her. I'll make her fine." Okay, thanks.
Right.
And not only just any deity god, whatever, but a deity god who's really good with illusions, who could have literally just cast an illusion of Rukia to be like, "Hey, don't worry about it."
Yeah.
But I really wanted it to go with the medical route and the payoff of, oh, she's cured and look at all the work Mabenga did. But then I'm thinking about it and I'm like, you can only draw so much drama from the suffering of a child in that format. And continually refridging Rukia, literally, in the buffer of the transporter, that's got to be hard and questionable and ethical, and maybe like not perform so well on those ratings that you're trying to get. It would be like the Bajoran episodes of DS9 that everyone's like, I skip these, but I don't skip them anymore. But a lot of people, just the episodes that have the arc that you're like, I'm not really following this arc. I don't really care.
Right. I think I agree with you completely, is that I don't know how long that maybe they thought that storyline was going to go. Maybe it went exactly as long as it was planned, and that there wasn't this sudden, well, shit, this story is not going to have any legs, because it just, how much can you do with, and like you said, having a child that you have to keep putting into your transporter buffer.
Yeah.
And it, like, for me, that's kind of okay. Yeah, that's sad. I have a daughter that's a few years younger than that, but you start putting yourself in that place, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't have wanted to see another couple or so seasons from now that he's still dealing with that. I think that just would have been
impossible to do from a casting standpoint, right? The actress has to age, even if she's living in a pattern buffer. This had to get resolved quickly.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, they could have did in this scene what they did in How I Met Your Mother, where they filmed all the scenes with the kids in the first year and then just let them go. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know they did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why the kids are always the same age throughout every episode.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Okay.
That is smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at that age, like 1 year, 1 summer can just screw your entire.
Yeah.
Look at Stranger Things.
Like,
they've had to do a lot of adjustments because of the way that they've all aged.
Yeah.
Yeah, because each episode takes place over subsequent years, but the first season was like 5 years ago. So they absolutely do need to make those kinds of adjustments. But yeah, the Rukia storyline really just couldn't have played out any other way. Like, they needed to tie that up, and okay, it's cool that they tied it up in the first episode, but the way they tied it up was very I still feel it was like Deus Ex Machina / fridging, because we're never going to see Rukia again, and now we have this single father who has lost his wife, now lost his daughter, and the joys of that come with raising a child to adulthood. And are the writers going to recognize that? You know, Mabenga is a very tragic character now. And if he just forgets about that and we go episodically, okay, I can understand from the episodic perspective, and maybe the producers just want that to be that way. But the character is now struggling.
Most of the casts of Star Trek are rather tragic people, right? Like, Kira's background should leave her more emotionally damaged than she already is, right? Yeah. Odo went through some shit, right? Tom Paris is a fucked up kid as well, right? Like, there are many characters.
Yes.
Spock himself should be really bad off.
And Logic, whatever.
Is damaged, right? Like,
no, you're not wrong.
And Picard was a Borg for like a 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
Right?
He had a 48-hour Borg cocktail and came back, and half the fleet was dead. Never again. Never again. Anytime I go to the Borg bar, it's gonna be virgin cocktails from here on out.
No more tequila ever.
no more tequila ever. But I'm just thinking about it from Mabenga's perspective. It's the Visitor in reverse, right? He had his baby, and now she's an adult, and now she's just off doing her own thing, and he has to exist and continue on. He's Jake Sisko now.
That's too much to just lose your child's growing.
All of those
Going-
things, even with the
all of it.
closure that like you made the right decision, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm doing all the things, I'm telling all my stories, please be happy. That's enough to ask about, but it's also like, have you tried not being sad?
Yeah.
You know? And
Just cheer up.
I mean,
I always
maybe
kinda-
on the bright side though, like a spin to this, maybe as a character, and Benga had already accepted that Rukia was gonna die, and he was just trying to like fight it and prolong it. Like maybe he was already depressed about it at that point.
that's
So
okay.
at that moment, any option where she lives on was great news.
Better.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I just hope that, you know, there's always that takeaway that Avery Brooks was very upset about at the end of DS9. You know, a single black father abandoning his family. He wanted it. He had that last line changed so that Cisco could return. And Beta Canon had written previously up until last year that Cisco had returned a year later and got to live with himself and Cassidy and Jake and Rebecca, and was an absolutely endearing father in all of his appearances in the Beta Canon. But now we have Mabenga, who now just got a free ticket to no longer have to worry about parenthood,
Well,
and that's hard.
so I don't agree with the sentiment that Cisco was abandoning his family.
that was
Neither
just
did
that was just
Avery
a
Brooks.
that was a caution that Avery Brooks was telling. He's like, I don't want this to come off this way, and that's why he changed that last line.
And I get that, and I would be curious to see who would actually get that vibe, because it's not like he just up and left in the middle of the night or left by choice. Basically, he sacrificed himself, taking out Gold Ducat to burn up the book. So he was
save the galaxy.
He didn't
Yeah,
just go to get cigarettes at the store or something, right?
Right.
I get
Yes,
it.
yes, that's it. He did not
Okay.
just go to the convenient store and then not come back. He sacrificed himself, and instead of just being gone, he became a prophet, true prophet. So I guess I could kind of see the overcaution that Avery Brooks as a black man had to fight that stereotype of the absent black father thing. But I really think in that case that was not how that was going to look at all, in my opinion.
Okay.
Well, I encourage you to make that argument to him if we ever get to interview him.
Oh,
That would be awesome. Yes. Oh, that would be spectacular.
If anybody knows Sirach Lofton, please just let him know. We're dying to interview Avery Brooks. We won't even talk about Star Trek like fans. We just want to know what his artistic directions and thoughts and feelings were. We know he doesn't do many
Yes.
cons. He doesn't come out much anymore, and he has presented some very eccentric behaviors in the last decade or so. But we'd love to have him on, even if we only have him for 30 seconds, and I'll just turn the phone over to Big J, and it'll be great.
That would be spectacular.
Big J, if you have one question to ask Avery Brooks, what would it be? I don't know. I think I would just say, what would you do with the Klondike bar?
What'd you do? All right, so I have two beefs. They're
Okay.
both kind of small, but I do want to bring them
Okay.
both up.
Do you
right?
have seasoned beef, or is this just like raw?
really, really raw?
Really
Are we talking
raw?
like
Okay.
two mini beef and cheddars, or one that's a double stack of beef?
No,
This is
two
just
separate things.
like-
So, yeah.
Okay.
Raw from a package.
So the first
Ew.
one is this beautiful map that they presented that I have behind me in the episode. It's the Kingdom of Elysium, right?
Uh-huh.
And in the map,
Shaped
they
like
have
the Enterprise.
different. It's shaped like the Enterprise. It's delightful. They even did different colors and different like symbols for each of the different kingdoms on it, right?
Mhm.
So we have Lady Audrey's Kingdom of the Woods over this shoulder here. We have Queen Nev in the red down here. Then we have the Kingdom of Elysium led by King Ridley at the very top. Then in the middle, we have this like long, thin brown section that doesn't have its own symbol and looks like a swamp, which I presume is the Swamp of Infinite Depths, which is why you have to travel through it to get to Queen Nev's kingdom. All that makes sense, right? Where is Princess Thalia's realm? She had her own kingdom. It was conquered by Queen Nev. The map wasn't updated because it's old as shit. It's got these stitch marks in it. Where is her kingdom? You can't just tell me someone has a kingdom and show me a map and not show me their kingdom. So that's a beef.
Well, nobody was ever able to explore it because they couldn't get past the ROUSs.
But they have the map for Queen Nev's kingdom down in engineering.
ROUSs, rodents of unusual size.
Are you just calling Runa a rodent? Because that's
No,
rodent,
it's
man. That's
Princess
rude.
Bride. Princess Bride reference.
I mean, I get
so
the
that's-
Princess Bride reference, but like your beef is like.
Like I said,
Yeah,
small
it's not
beef.
really beef.
It's beef. I want my maps to be accurate, man. So that's two beefs.
It's
One
like
is small.
It's like
I
a
get-
16
I get it.
pounder. Okay.
Yeah, I get it. It wasn't seasoned. You know, I'll take that beef. No seasoning
The
on it.
second
but,
one is
Mhm.
we know that this entity that was able to push its consciousnesses into people's bodies what had trouble with Hemmer because he has a trained telepathic mind. Why didn't
Okay.
Spock have any sort of issues with
Because
this?
Spock
We
is a
know-
touch telepath. I already answered this in
Correct.
another forum.
I don't
Vulcans
think
are
this
touch
matters.
telepaths.
I don't think that matters because
And he's
V'ger
half
reached out to
Vulcan.
him. V'ger reached out to him from across the galaxy. The Red Angel managed to fuck with his head from across the galaxy. Other things fuck with his
So
head
the
from
Red
across
Angel
galaxy,
wasn't telepathic.
but still somehow managed to put things in his head.
I don't think he put anything in his head.
Then how did he know as a kid where all the symbols were and all the drawings and stuff?
Because Burnham had to go fulfill that destiny in the past when she was time traveling as the Red Angel in the last at the end of season 2.
Like a
okay,
self-fulfilling.
She had to go fulfill
self-enclosed-
How do you
all of the
respond to V'ger
appearances.
then? How do you respond to V'ger then?
That
Um,
was when he was at his weakest at the Kolinar.
That would be when one is at their strongest. at the
No, it was
Yes.
Spock's weakest.
Well, okay. Here's what I'll say.
Purging his
Renzo.
mother's side, that would have harrowed the man. He was looking
I
for a
think here's how I will answer that is V'ger did not try to initiate a takeover of Spock's mind. It was more of a projection of feelings and emotions. Whereas this entity was actively trying to take over someone's mind, reprogram it, make them think that they're somebody else, and then afterwards make it to where they don't remember any of that. So I think V'ger and this entity, they were two very different things. They tried to do different things. So in my opinion, that's why this entity was able to take over Spock, because it was like a, how do I want to say it? It was a stronger guided, like, this is the thing we're doing. I'm trying to take over this being's mind. V'ger wasn't trying to mind control. It was throwing feelings out, and Spock as a telepath, even touch telepath, was that's what that was. That's how I look at it, and why I think
That's fair. I get that. The V'ger wasn't trying to take him over, even though that's what the rest of the Enterprise crew thought was going on. But-
yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
That being said, he's not just a touch telepath. He also did fuck with people remotely through walls and such in TOS. So he's not just a touch telepath.
Okay, so he's a proximal telepath. But okay, I'm
The
gonna
nebula's
acknowledge
all around them.
I'm gonna acknowledge this. I'm gonna acknowledge this beef and maybe just sum it up in a much more simple matter that Spock is not as an experienced a telepath as he will be in 15, 16 years.
That's fair.
Right.
I can't argue with that one, right? But I mean, it still would have. I don't think it would have strained credulity for like Spock to have like a moment where he like breaks out of Pollux the wizard and is like confused, and then it comes back or something. Like there should have been more to it, because we know that Spock is someone who is difficult to mind fuck with.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I do think it's a valid criticism. It's a valid beef, and we can speculate and stretch all we want. And I'm sure there are other, maybe other telepaths on the ship
Others,
that
yeah.
could have had a different time with that. What I do want to say is that Spock looks fucking sexy here. It's the sexiest Spock we've had on TV ever.
Disagree.
Did on TV? Not
Yes,
counting
disagree.
movies played on TV.
Nope, disagree.
but what other time?
First episode of this show, Ethan Peck's Pecs was fantastic.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, you forgot about Pex.
I don't like them when they're naked. I like them when there's clothes on and I can imagine things. Anyway, the hair.
That just adds more work, man.
The hair. Well, hey, if you don't want to use your imagination, that's not my problem. Interesting. Also,
speaking of hair, Anson Mount's mount was totally flat for this episode, and it looked really sad on him.
It was the pathetic. It was the pathetic look.
It fit the character he was playing.
Yeah, the sniveling. Did anybody capture the names of both wizard characters?
Pollux and Castor.
And why is that somewhat cool and important?
They're both stars.
They're the twins, yeah. They're the Gemini
They're both
twins.
characters in the movie Face Off.
Yeah. Castor and Pollux Troy. I could eat a peach for hours. Thanks, Nick Cage.
All right. Anybody else have any other big comments, things they want to bring up about this episode? Because
I talked about everything I wanted to talk about and more. Renzo?
It's probably like my weakest episode of the season so far. I thought that the costuming and the acting was great, but the story itself was just meh. So for me, it's like my least on this season.
But the story might have been meh, but it was meaningful for Rukia, and that's where the significance for the episode comes from for me, is that it's a Rukia Mabenga episode, and I love it, and I hope that Mabenga gets some after effects, some more dealing with the closure of this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more Ortega's characterization, like when it's actually Ortega says Ortega says Adia.
Yes.
But Michelle Navi did a great job in this episode too. Everybody did a great job. Like, there's no arguing that, but it just was kind of a dull episode for me.
Okay. Jay.
What I would say is I wouldn't besmirch them the quote unquote fun episode. I think every Star Trek every Star Trek has had that fun episode, and I don't mind those. It's theirs. I have nothing against the fun episodes. There are some Star Trek episodes that
is my favorite episode of the season so far, and that was absolutely a fun episode. So.
Well, I mean, yes, it was. I see, but this one to me is like I don't know. I thought I kind of defined fun a little differently. This was just, I don't know, fun, farce, whatever you want to call it.
This would have been a holodeck episode of any other show for sure.
Yes. I'm not saying that it's.
What is that one? The one where Robin Hood.
Right. Yeah. Cupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. That. Sure. It's like that. Okay, it was a fun dress-up episode. I'm not saying that it's in my top 5 of this season. There's only 8 episodes, but I didn't dislike it.
Yeah, it was good and it was fun. I do want to give a shout out.
I'm not a costume aficionado, so that's like that. Right, that's the thing. Is it probably? I can see how you guys would like those details. Or were able to acknowledge those details more than
as I watched
did.
The episode, I was
at
just
the time,
wishing I could watch it with Cal myself. Don't worry.
Yeah, I didn't know what you guys were. I didn't know what you guys were talking about. I mean, you know how long I went wearing socks and sandals or plaid on plaid. So yeah, when it comes to fashion, forget about it. I might as well just sit and listen.
It was absolutely a treasure, and I was thinking the whole time. Now I can go to Ren Fair in a Starfleet costume, in a Star Trek costume, and still look like I'm in Ren Fair.
Yes.
Totally go as like the sniveling.
Just say you're on an away mission.
Well, that's what I tell people, but I'm usually in uniform. Can I give a shout out to the dude in the background of the last scene who was sitting on the bed with those long dreads or braids? I don't know if anybody noticed that, but people online talk a lot about like that's not Starfleet, regulation, and I'm like, hey, here's this dude. He has like 2-foot braids down to his back. It's great. I love it.
We also don't know he's in Starfleet. He could just be like a civilian member of the crew. Why even make a big deal for you?
We don't know he's not in Starfleet. I just thought the hair was cool. Let me have it.
The hair is cool. The hair is cool.
I'm pulling up a picture here. You said it was like at the end of the episode.
It's at the end of the episode when the camera is looking at Una, and in the background you can see a dude on a bio bed, and he's got a thick stack of braids going down to his butt. I just like that. I love it.
Again, it's something that doesn't bother me. I've seen men playing football with that kind of hair outside of their helmet, and that's just a hazard right there. Okay, you're running with the ball. All I need to do is just grab your hair and yoink! Done.
I think about that in like Taekwondo and stuff, and that's just dirty fighting. Like, I think if somebody grabbed your hair to pull you over or tackle you in football, like that'd be like a flag would hit the field for that. Unnecessary roughness.
If you're the one that wants to wear your hair out like that and give yourself that kind of disadvantage, you know, I ain't your daddy. You grew your hair like that, I'm using it.
Or they're just flaunting it, being like, look, I've given myself a disadvantage and I'm still better than you.
Oh, and he's wearing sandals too. He's got on his hospital shoes.
He's in a medical gown.
23rd century Crocs. It's cool.
Crocs. Yeah. You know, honestly, it's kind of like worst bandolier, Baldric. Bandolier.
Bandoliers
Baldric
have ammo in them.
Right. I know.
It would be cool if Worf had like a little dagger that he kept in there. Like, oh, my batleth broke. Oh, my mechleth broke. Ah, Doktog.
We've seen other Klingons hold things in their like baldricks.
Oh yeah, sure.
Of course. Well, I think that's what it's for. Of course, Worf can just walk around the ship armed like that. But with this guy, who knows? Maybe it's a cultural thing, like the Bajoran earrings or the Klingon baldric. This dude.
It makes me think, like, Worf could have, like, beat somebody to death with his baldric if he wanted to. That
it's a weapon.
Much. I wonder how Starfleet regs would work with, like, a Sikh person who has to carry, like, the little religious significant knife on them at all times. I wonder how that would work.
Wait,
if that's still a thing after World War III.
We've seen that. Not necessarily a Sikh, but somebody with an ornamental dagger. Our Temerian friend on Lower Decks.
Lower Decks.
On the Lower Decks. Yeah. That's true.
He's got the ceremonial dagger. Yeah. Well, everybody,
liked it. Yep.
We got through what we got through, and we've had a bit of a wind down. Did you enjoy this episode, The Elysian Kingdom? Let us know in the comments. Like, follow, subscribe, all of that jazz. Hit us up on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod, or let Renzo know how much you agree or disagree with him at Hawkshark. And if he checks his Twitter this decade, you might get an answer. As for me, you can always find me on Twitter at Trek Nexus. And from all of us here, thank you for going boldly with Beyond Trek Podcast. Hey everybody, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our Patreon and Anchor supporters. Big thanks to Stephanie Baker, S. Tam, Anne Marie, Jim Cook, and Nora Hickson. We really appreciate your support. Thanks for being a part of Beyond Trek Podcast.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.